Good day, students. We're going to speak about Module 4. Now, I have started with Module 4 with you, so I'm just going to do a slight revision, seeing that you were very busy preparing for your exams. Module 4 deals with applied overheads, also known as recovered manufacturing overheads. Now, MOH is all the expenses that needs to be paid in order to manage or run a factory. MOH excludes direct material and direct labor. It's also regarded as indirect cost or expenses and consists of fixed or variable expenses. Now, MOH can be divided into two, applied MOH and actual MOH. We're going to look at what's the difference between the two. Firstly, MOH. What expenses must be paid to run the factory? Your factory rent, your factory water, your factory maintenance, your factory insurance, your indirect labor, your supervisor's salary, your indirect material or your secondary material, your depreciation on factory equipment, machinery, tools, cleaning costs, fuel, detergents, all of this, if they don't give it to you individually, it will be known as consumables and packing material. Applied overheads. The actual overheads to be paid for the current financial year is only known at the end of the financial year. Now, there's certain things that's calculated at the start or during or the end of the financial year. Now, why do we have applied overheads and why do we have actual overheads? Now, when you want to calculate cost of production, you use direct material, direct labor, and applied overheads. You don't use the actual overheads. But I'm going to break it down. First things first. There's certain things that, like I said, is calculated at the start, during, or the end of the financial year. These are the four things. Your budgeted overheads is calculated at the start. Your predetermined rate, also known as your recovery rate, applied MOH rate, application MOH rate, is normally calculated at the start of the financial year. Applied overheads, like I said, is used when you want to calculate cost of production, and this is calculated as work is completed when you want to calculate the cost of production. Under or over applied, under applied or over applied is only done at the end of the financial year. Budgeted overheads. Like I said, actual overheads is only known at the end of the financial year. But at the start of the financial year, you estimate how much you want to spend in MOH expenses for the current financial year. Predetermined rate, also known as recovery rate, applied MOH rate, and application rate. A predetermined rate is calculated at the start of the financial year. It's calculated using budgeted amounts. There is 7 bases to choose from. Sometimes a predetermined rate is given to you. Now, if they say calculate a predetermined rate using material as the base, it's budgeted MOH over budgeted direct material cost times 100 over 1. If they say calculate a predetermined rate using direct labor cost as your base, then it's budgeted overheads over budgeted direct labor cost times 100 over 1. And your answers in number 1 and 2 will be in percentage. If they say calculate a predetermined rate using labor hours as the base, then it's budgeted overheads over budgeted direct labor hours. And your answer will here in number 3 will be in rands. If they say calculate predetermined rate using machine hours as the base, then it's budgeted overheads over budgeted machine hours. And here your answer will also be in rands. If they say calculate a predetermined rate using units as the base, then it's budgeted overheads over budgeted units. If they say calculate a predetermined rate using prime cost as a base, then it's budgeted overheads over budgeted prime cost. Now, what makes budgeted prime cost? It's your budgeted direct material plus your budgeted direct labor. You add that together and that gives you your budgeted prime cost. And this answer must also be in rands. Then our 7th base is a combination when you must use more than one base to calculate a predetermined rate. The budgeted overheads is split as a percentage when calculating the predetermined rate. For example, calculate a predetermined rate using a combination of 60% of machine hours and 40% of labor hours. Now here in full, your budgeted MOH is 600,000. So when you calculate the predetermined rate using machine hours as a base, you don't use the full 600,000, you use only 60% of it, but you will use the full 40,000 machine hours. If they asked you to calculate the predetermined rate using labor hours as the base, then you will only use 40% of that, but you will use the full 30,000 hours. Now, in class, I have done activity 2 with you. Now, when you do these activities, you must ask yourself, what do they want from me? Do they want step 1? Do they want step 2? Do they want step 3? Or do they want step 4 or 5? Now, in this activity, they say the cost accountant of Chiquita Manufacturers estimated the following for the financial year. And all this information is budgeted information. The budgeted MOH was 500,000. The budgeted units was 20,000. The budgeted material cost was a million rand for 20,000 units. The budgeted labor cost was 2 million rand for 20,000 units. And the budgeted labor hours was 80,000 for 20,000 units. And the budgeted machine hours was 40,000. So like I said, we did this activity in class where they say, calculate the following. Calculate the predetermined rate using direct material as a base. So what step do they want? They want us to do step 2, where they use various terms. Predetermined rate, applied MOH rate, recovery MOH rate, application MOH rate, and overhead application rate and overhead rate. It means the same. So what must we do? We must calculate the predetermined rate using material as the base. So calculation of predetermined MOH rate. In 2.11, you must use material as your base. So it's budgeted MOH over budgeted material costs. So there's my budgeted MOH, and there's my budgeted material cost of R1 million. So I take 500,000 divided by 1 million times 100 over 1, and that is called my predetermined rate. In 2.12, they ask you to calculate application MOH rate. It's the same as predetermined rate, a combination of 60% of machine hours and 40% labor hours. That means you must calculate 2 predetermined rates using machine hours as the base and using labor hours as the base. So my formula is budgeted overheads over budgeted machine hours. Now my budgeted overheads was 500,000. So I'm only going to use 60% of it, which gives me 300,000. And I'm going to use the full 40,000 machine hours. And there's my predetermined rate. Next, I must calculate another predetermined rate using labor hours as the base. It's budgeted MOH over budgeted labor hours. My budgeted MOH was 500,000, but I'm only going to use 40%, which gives me 200,000. And there is my budgeted labor hours. And that's my answer. R2.50 is called my applied MOH rate, which is the same as predetermined rate. So that is the answer to activity 2. In my next video, I will do activity 1. Which is this one over here, which I also gave as an activity. So I'm just going to recap on the answers.